Begin with a song, and during this stream I'm going to be talking a lot about fingerstyle guitar. So let us know in the comments where you're tuning in from. This song's called Fireflies. Do enjoy playing that song. It's been a while since I've played it. Alright, so I see the comments here. And like I said, let us know where you're tuning in from. It's always interesting to read the different countries and the different cities from which we all gather to enjoy music. And in the case of this stream, to talk a little bit about guitar playing and guitar technique, the way I like to approach it, which is using a technique called fingerstyle, in which you use all your fingers potentially. So I'm going to talk about that quite a bit during this stream. And the reason is I'm celebrating the relaunch of my best-selling fingerstyle courses on my Invisible Technique platform. So if you're interested in learning to play fingerstyle guitar, just like the way I'm going to teach it, and the way I like to approach it, and the way I've helped many thousands of students improve their fingerstyle skills, then now's a great time to jump on board, because my fingerstyle courses are on sale for 80% off this week only. This is kind of the launch special. They're never going to be that cheap again. So now's the time to jump on board if you're interested. And you'll also go in the draw to win one of these, which is an Udo Rosner DeCapo 75 acoustic guitar amplifier. This is my acoustic amp of choice. That being said, when I play in the studio or during a live stream, I'm just using a microphone, which is quite conspicuous right here. But the Capo 75 is an incredible acoustic guitar amplifier that is going to be a really great tool if you want to play on a stage at any point. So we're giving one of those away. The value is $1,200. So anyone who signs up for the fingerstyle courses this week, you'll go in the draw to win one of these amps. So that's quite exciting. So check the link in the description for all the information about those courses. And let me know in the chat if you have any questions in the comments, I should say. So fingerstyle guitar is a way of playing the guitar, like I said, with 10 fingers. So on your left hand, obviously, you use the fingers to fret the notes. Many guitar players will just use their fingers but not their thumb. However, for fingerstyle guitar, at least modern fingerstyle, classical guitar is of course a form of fingerstyle guitar, but classical guitarists don't make use of their left hand thumb. But I think we have a thumb for a reason, and if you're playing in this informal position, meaning you're not in the classical position like this, then the left hand thumb can be very useful. For example, instead of playing an F chord like this, which is actually quite difficult, playing an F chord like this is also a bit tricky to get used to, but what that allows you to do is play melodies on those top strings. Yeah, how beautiful that sounds. Whereas if you barred that F, you can't really do that in the same way. So we really do make use of all our fingers playing fingerstyle, and with the right hand, of course, we're using the right hand fingers to pluck the strings. I don't use fingernails, so I just use the pads of my fingers, which I feel works well for a steel string guitar. I feel it doesn't work quite as well for a nylon string guitar, but I just make do with no fingernails. It just works for me. I don't have to maintain them. I like the sound. There are pros and cons to using fingernails. I do use a thumb pick quite often, and this thumb pick is a Dunlop medium, and it's the perfect size for my thumb. You may have a different size thumb for me. If your thumb is a bit larger, you might try a Dunlop large. Generally speaking, the Dunlops are available in just about every country, and they're the most common thumb pick you will find in a music store. I usually buy my thumb picks from a store rather than online because I like to try on all the different thumb picks. Sometimes you just got to get them in a bag and you can't try them on, which is unfortunate, but generally speaking, I'll find my way through a bag and find a few picks that feel good. And this is the thumb pick I've used for, gosh, I guess 20 years now, since I was like 10 or 11 years old. So there you go. So what we're trying to do is, there are different ways to approach fingerstyle guitar. Of course, you can play fingerstyle patterns to accompany a lead instrument or a voice, and that is a beautiful way to approach it. If you were to play like James Taylor's songs, that's a beautiful way of playing fingerstyle guitar to accompany a voice. And James has a beautifully melodic voice with beautifully melodic songs. So his fingerstyle guitar is a really important part of his thing that he does. If you wanted to play fingerstyle guitar like a jazz guitarist, then oftentimes jazz guitarists do a lot of comping, which can mean playing a chord progression like this. That's another way to approach fingerstyle guitarists, and someone like Martin Taylor, in my mind, would be a really great example of someone who does this beautifully well. And you can also combine walking bass lines when playing fingerstyle. So, for example, my arrangement of Misty has a walking bass line. So there's not really a lot of comping going on in that way of playing. It's not really chord melody in the way someone like Martin Taylor would often play, and a lot of the more fingerstyle jazz guitar players. That has a very distinct bass line and a very distinct melody. And this kind of way of playing can be traced back to the great blues and folk guitarists. Elizabeth Cotten was someone who had a great fingerstyle guitar technique that influenced people like Mel Travis and Chet Atkins, who took that approach and applied it, in Chet's case, to many, many songs, many different styles, and really showed what was possible from the perspective of a great arranger and player So that's kind of the world that I come from, in which we're playing a bass line and a melody together. And the bass line can be something like this. There it is. And then the melody comes in, which this song is Freight Train, of course. And of course, there's many modern twists on fingerstyle guitar that use tapping and percussion and different techniques, different tunings. There's many different things you can do with it. And of course, the folk musicians took fingerstyle in a certain direction, kind of more in the ilk of James Taylor, where most folk fingerstyle guitar players don't play melodies. They mostly play patterns to accompany the voice, which tells the story, which is kind of the thread of folk music. But I think that this way of approaching fingerstyle guitar, where you learn a bass line and a melody, is one of the best ways to go about learning to play this way, because arrangements like Freight Train have an exact series of notes, they have repeating patterns, and they have a lot of different roles and patterns built in to the songs. So the way I recommend people learn, no matter what kind of fingerstyle guitar branch you want to go off into, is learning to play classic arrangements that have a melody and a bass line. So, are you all following me so far? Does that all make sense? Is it interesting to everybody? Dieselman says, brilliant, Joe. Great stuff. You're amazing. Thanks, Brian. Yeah, cheers, Brian. I've got some basic fingerstyle songs down really well, like Windy and Warm. Great. I want to do more advanced stuff like Cannonball Rag, but not there yet. What are some intermediate songs? That's a great question. Some intermediate songs would be songs like Jiffy Jam. Jerry Reed songs are really great pieces to learn, because oftentimes, with the exception of tunes like Jerry's Breakdown or Struttin', or, well, there's a few others that are insanely difficult. There's a few really great mid-tempo Jerry Reed songs like Struttin', Jiffy Jam is a good one, as well as Baby's Coming Home. So, learning these songs and developing your repertoire is honestly what I believe to be the best way to build your technique, because there's a lot of good exercises and there are some fundamental things to learn how to do before you start learning these songs, like learn the thumb patterns, for example, like the 5th string bass pattern and the 6th string bass pattern, no matter what chords you're using. So you learn the bass patterns and you learn a couple simple finger-picking patterns, but from there, it's not all about just playing patterns, over and over and over again. It's about learning songs and developing the repertoire, because the repertoire, it's like cross-training. It's like you learn how to turn in this direction, you learn how to turn in that direction, you learn how to turn up, you learn how to turn down, you learn how to play with this finger on the downbeat, you learn how to play with all these different note combinations. And I like to keep a spreadsheet of my repertoire. So I have a spreadsheet with a list of all the tunes I've learned. And when I'm practicing, I'll sit there and I'll go through them and say, oh, I haven't played that one in a while. And so I'll sit there with my metronome and I'll practice it. And it's a great way to brush up on songs and kind of stay organized with the songs that you know and that you've learned. So if you're interested in learning to play with this method, I have a very easy to follow step-by-step series of courses that I know many of you have already been through, so I'm preaching to the choir, But do check out my fingerstyle guitar courses, which are on sale this week only for 80% off. The beginner course is going to be perfect for those who are new to fingerstyle guitar. So even if you've played rock and roll guitar for a while with a pick or strumming guitar, and you can already kind of play even at an intermediate level, I'd recommend going back to the beginner course when you're first learning to play fingerstyle. If you can play songs like Windy and Warm, like the comment I just read, then the intermediate course would be the place to start. And I actually have a list of recommended songs in that course and many resources and exercises that are going to be very helpful. And I also have an advanced course for those who are more experienced and more serious about their practicing. And when it comes to the advanced topics, there's not a lot of people who can really talk about it. Fortunately, we live in an amazing time where the internet allows me to connect with you, and I have many friends and contemporaries. I shouldn't say many, a handful of friends and contemporaries who also play guitar at a very high level and teach very well. And let me tell you that not every popular teacher out there who's teaching fingerstyle has good habits and teaches the right things. For example, one thing I've seen many people do is play with what I call the hook thumb, which is like this. See how my thumb is hooking like that? It's shocking to me to see people with a million subscribers on YouTube giving you a fingerstyle guitar lesson, and they do things like that. Another thing you'll see is people playing like this with their thumb going like that, which I'm sure you don't need me to tell you that's terribly inefficient, and you're not going to have clarity, you're not going to have precision, you're not going to have accuracy if your thumb is flailing about like mad. So we want to really develop the fundamentals properly. And if you watch someone like Tommy Emmanuel, if you watch someone like Julian Bream, if you watch someone like John Williams, if you watch any really accomplished high level musician, you'll notice they have flawless, beautiful technique. And that is what I try to teach people. The kind of principles of technique are staying relaxed when you play, and that is a difficult thing to train your hands how to do, because playing the guitar is a complicated set of mechanics, and we need to find ways of, for example, figuring out how we can get the left hand to play with the minimum amount of necessary force to fret the notes, and to have the right hand be able to play whisper quiet or with a lot of volume and attack. So we want to have that independence from the hands. The left hand just is the defense, and the right hand is the offense. And we also need to have independence between all our fingers, and that takes a different set of exercises and songs and a different approach to develop. The good news is it's all really fun, and it's all a beautiful thing. Music has so many benefits for us. It's great for relieving stress. It's great for us to feel connected to other people when we're playing music together, when we're enjoying music. It's great for your blood pressure. It's great for so many things. I'm sure I don't need to preach to you the value of music. Music is the world's oldest language, you could say. And I certainly love playing music more and more every day. And I'm going to play another song in just a moment. But that's kind of the way I like to approach teaching fingerstyle, is working on some very specific patterns, some very specific songs, and trying to build from a place of having really beautiful, invisible technique. So the technique just allows the music to shine through, just allows your expression to shine through in the music. That's why I called my teaching platform Invisible Technique. And many of you will have gone through my fingerstyle courses on the Udemy platform, and I've moved my courses from Udemy to Invisible Technique. And the reason I did that is because Udemy is kind of like a behemoth of a teaching platform. There's 50 million active users on Udemy, so it's a good way to reach a lot of students. However, with a platform like that comes a lot of downsides. I don't have direct communication with my students, for one, so that's a negative for you. Another downside is Udemy's customer support. As you can imagine, with 50 million users, they have a lot of customer support challenges. So I've had people who would buy a course on Udemy and say, I typed in the wrong email address, how can I get my money back? And you can't. So many issues like that. Not to mention, as an instructor, they kind of just sell your course for whatever they decide to, and they pay you a fraction of what they sell it for. So I've moved all my courses off Udemy, and I'm not going back. The courses going forward are hosted on my Invisible Technique platform, where you will get a more white glove service from me as your instructor. You have the ability to leave comments, and I have the ability to reply. I have the ability to email you about certain things I might choose to do, like if I do a Zoom call. Hey, all my Fingerstyle students, jump on this Zoom call. There are many things that we can do. And as I said earlier, the courses are 80% this week, and I don't want to turn this video into just a big sales pitch, but I do sincerely hope you'll check it out. If you have been on the Udemy platforms, then go down to the bottom of the page where there's a little FAQ section, and it says, what if I purchased these courses on Udemy? And if you click that link, you'll be taken to a page that kind of explains the ways in which this is superior to Udemy. So let me know if you have any questions. And I'm going to continue through, maybe I'll play a song and then just answer some questions and talk a little more about Fingerstyle. I've got another half an hour or so to be with you all. So why don't I play Flow? If you do have any requests, let me know. This is a composition of mine. That song is called Flow. It's one of my newer compositions, and I just love playing it. And I tend to get quite a few requests for it. So hope you enjoyed that song. I saw a question from Maxime. Hey Maxime, hope you're doing well over there in France. Asking if I'm using an amplifier or am I plugged in for this stream. And no, I'm just using this microphone here, just one microphone. And I have a little reverb here, but just the mic in front of the guitar. And I usually use, like for my concerts, for live concerts, through a PA on a stage, this Udo Rosner Da Capo 75. Udo was the man who developed AER amps, and this is the new line of amplifiers that he's producing, and they're absolutely phenomenal. Certainly light years ahead of the other acoustic amps on the market in my estimation. And also, it just sounds more transparent and richer than the AER amps, which I used those for a long time. So if you purchase one of my Fingerstyle courses this week, you're going to draw to win one of these amplifiers, and I'll be announcing the winner a week from now, basically. So that's pretty exciting and pretty cool. So let's talk a little more about Fingerstyle guitar. So I'll talk a little bit about kind of the mindset and the inner game, if you will, of performing a musical piece, at least in my opinion. And remember, I'm an expert on my opinion. Take it for what it's worth. When I'm playing a song, what I'm trying to think about is as little technical information as I can. So the ideal scenario is I've played the song so many times that my hands remember how to play it. People say to me all the time, if they come up to me after a 2-hour concert where I've played songs back to back to back for 2 hours, how do you remember all those songs? And I say, well, I don't remember them. My hands remember them. And it's because for every one of those songs that you've heard, I've played it dozens and dozens, and in some cases hundreds or even thousands of times, slowly, with good controlled technique, with a metronome. Ask anybody who lives with a musician, and they'll tell you, oh yeah, they play those same songs over and over and over again. So there's a lot of repetition involved in developing a skill like playing fingerstyle guitar pieces. I think it's a really beautiful thing to sit there and kind of get into like a Zen state, playing songs over and over again, trying to really just pull as much beauty out of your instrument as you can. When learning a new song for the first time, I think it's good to have an appropriate expectation of what it really takes to incorporate that song into your muscle memory and into your repertoire. And that's going to be different depending on how experienced of a player you are. So as you're first learning to play songs, as I'm sure you've experienced if you've tried to play the guitar, it takes a long time when you first learn your first chord, let alone your first song. But as you learn a few more songs, then you get quicker and quicker at learning them and integrating them into your repertoire. That being said, even for very advanced and dedicated players, it can be a real challenge to incorporate a new song into your repertoire, especially if it involves new techniques or new chords. Like, for example, if I was to learn a song in a different tuning that I've never played in, that would be like I'm learning a whole different instrument. Not exactly, but it would really require a lot of different chord shapes that I've never played. And that's part of the reason I prefer not to dabble in alternate tunings, although I do appreciate the sound of them, because I'm so familiar with the neck of my guitar in standard tuning, and I've gotten so used to finding melodies where I want them, and I prefer to put the focus on composing nice melodies and nice elements rather than trying to learn new shapes. So in terms of the inner mental game, that's kind of the first foundation that we need to have. We need to know the song well enough so that we don't need to be thinking about the technical information of, I need to go to this fret, I need to go to this chord, I need to go to this melody. Ideally, we're just grooving away with our body and feeling a groove and feeling the rhythm of a song. It's kind of a physical act. There is some math to it, like there's subdivisions of notes. This is the quarter note, that's the 8th note, 16th note, and triplets and so forth. There's not that many subdivisions to learn, but there's many different types of syncopation and rhythms that we can incorporate into performing a musical piece. But ideally, our body feels the rhythm and we're not thinking about the subdivisions. And again, this is my opinion. I like to think about, well, it's not really thinking. I'm just listening. That's my goal, is to listen to the melody I'm playing and listen to the tone and the sound I'm pulling out of my guitar. So in an ideal performance state, we're quite relaxed. We're playing a song that we have in our repertoire, and I'll speak about getting that song to be kind of solid in the repertoire a little more in just a moment. So we know the song, we're relaxed, we're grooving, and we're listening. In my mind, that's like the perfect setting to perform a song well. Now, in terms of getting that song to be in your repertoire, as I said, you got to play it many, many times over. And I think that performing is a key element to figuring out how well you know a song and figuring out what you need to do to get it to a point where you can perform it and play it flawlessly without any mistakes. And in my experience, it takes 6 or 8 times, roughly speaking, of me performing a new song before I can consider it part of my repertoire where I can play it perfectly without making any major mistakes. But for those first 6 or 8 times, there's going to be mistakes, and there's going to be my brain kind of trying to remember how it goes. But that's just part of the learning process. And in terms of performing, you don't need to perform on a big stage. You don't need to perform in front of a large audience. You can just perform for some friends, for some family. You can perform for a video camera. You can use your phone to record yourself playing and post it online if you want. You'll find out pretty quick once that record button's on, you start to really pay attention to all the little things that go wrong with your performance. And I will say that's a good thing, because it means you're aware of what's not quite dialed in about your playing. If you're the kind of person that just plays and thinks you sound amazing, and then you listen back and it's definitely not far from where you thought it was in your ear, then that's more difficult. And it really takes a while to become a good listener and to really hear what you actually sound like. I'm going to read some comments now. Here's a question from Alex Martin. Do you ever smoke cannabis when you play? No, I absolutely do not. Good evening, brother. What string gauge do you use? Thanks for the answer. So on this guitar, this is a Maton steel string guitar. I use a set of 12 to 54 gauge Ernie Ball strings, but the high E, I take the 12 off and I put a 14 on. So it's a little bit of a heavier high E, and I just like that tone. So my guitar has large frets, I have pretty heavy strings. That being said, the set, which goes from a 14 to a 54, is not as heavy as a set of medium strings, which is 13 to 56. So a set of medium strings is going to be really, really heavy. Like I play a medium string guitar and I'm like, wow, that's a lot of tension. But for me, it's a set of light gauge string, 12 to 54, but with a 14 on top. I have an old Gibson back there that's from 1943, and I put 11 to 49 strings on that because it doesn't have a truss rod. So I think it depends a little bit on your instrument and on your, what you like, of course, the way you want your guitar to feel. But I think it's worth experimenting, and most importantly, this is something that I tend to go on about. I tend to drone on about, is having your guitar set up by someone who is an experienced luthier. because getting the nut height on your guitar to be just right, getting the saddle height to be just right, getting the neck relief to be just right, and getting the frets to be dressed well is an art. And it's something that, unless you've trained and set up a lot of guitars and worked on a lot of guitars, you're probably not going to do a good job setting up an acoustic instrument. Electric guitars are a bit easier because you can just adjust the saddles kind of thing and straighten the neck a little bit. It's not as big a deal. But on acoustic instruments, I always highly recommend people take your guitar to your local music store and ask them to perform a basic setup. If your guitar needs a lot of work, like if it's an older guitar that needs a refret, that'll tend to be expensive. But generally speaking, a basic setup is the cost of a guitar pedal or something. So, and it's something that you don't need to set your guitar up every 6 months. You don't need to set your guitar up once a year. It's maybe if there's a season change and you need a slight adjustment, that's a possibility. But for most people, that won't be necessary. For me, I need a guitar setup when either I've worn down my frets too much after like 5 years, or I need a refret or a fret dress. But for the most part, I don't need to touch my guitars, and that's just a little bit of information. Domari says, can you recommend mid-range recording mic? So I would recommend, if you haven't gone through my recording acoustic program, I would highly recommend that as a priority if you're going to be recording acoustic guitar. You're going to learn more in that course than you will from buying an expensive mic. Many people spend thousands of dollars on microphones, but it's really more important to learn how to record than to have the gear. Anyway, I don't want to preach on that too much, but check out my recording course for a mid-range mic. It depends on what you mean by mid-range. Like this is a higher end mic that was handmade in Nashville. These cost about $6,000, and there's cheaper mics. Like I have a USB mic from Audio-Technica that sounds just fine, and to me a mid-range mic might be like an AKG 414, which is a common mic you'll see in many studios. So there as you can see, there's a big range. And generally speaking, when you buy equipment, the more you pay, you get diminishing returns. So the difference between a $50 mic and a $200 mic is going to be considerable. You're gonna have some kind of really dodgy mic for $50 that's probably going to break, or you'll have an SM57 which isn't really sensitive enough for recording acoustic music, I think. At least fingerstyle, if you're strumming maybe. But a $200 mic is going to be really, really a big step up, whereas a $5,000 mic is not going to be that much of a step up from a $1,000 mic. Anyway, I have a recording course. You can check that out. It's very in-depth. Speaking of which, anyone who's just joining me, my fingerstyle courses are on sale this week for 80% off. It's the launch promotion that will never happen again. I'm just doing this once to establish my courses moving from Udemy, which is a mass market, bottom of the barrel pricing platform, to my boutique teaching platform, Invisible Technique, in which I have a more direct connection with my students. You can ask comments under the videos, and it's just a better experience for everyone involved, I believe. So I hope you'll check it out if you're interested in learning to play fingerstyle guitar. I'm a very patient teacher. I don't go through things too quickly. I really take my time. At least that was what I was striving to do. And you can go to the fingerstyle course page and read all the reviews. There's 2,000 reviews on the beginner course of people, and the average rating of the courses is like 4.6, 4.7, something like that. And if you purchase the courses this week, not only will you get them at the cheapest price that they'll ever be again, which is 80% off the full price, you'll go in the draw to win one of these acoustic guitar amps, which is valued at $1,200 US. It's an amazing acoustic guitar amp, the Capo 75 by Udo Rosner. Tammy says, Well, I'll take all kinds of questions, and I appreciate these kind of questions. Hi Joe, how would you balance obsessive guitar playing in a relationship? That's a really good question, and I can probably answer it from the perspective of someone who's been quite obsessive, to say the least. I remember when I had my first girlfriend, I was about 6 years old. Of course, we were just like the kind of we were dating, like we'd give each other notes on the school bus, that kind of thing. And I wrote this girl a note and said, I'm sorry, I don't have time to have a girlfriend because I need to do my piano practice and I need to focus on that. So that's how focused I was at 6 years old on playing the piano. And look, I think it's, let's talk about focus. So to me, focus is a really great word, because focus actually means doing less. It means choosing to do less things so that we have more time to do the things that we choose to do. So, for example, I have my phone on airplane mode almost all day. I really try to limit distractions. I don't have a TV. There are certain things that I just don't do because I just don't feel I want to do them. And so therefore, I find I have a little more time for playing music. But my wife and our relationship is very important to me, so I try to focus on that as well. And there are just certain important things in my world that I feel are really important, and I try to just do less of the less important things. Anyway, I'm not sure I have any really great suggestions other than just doing a lot of self-examination, thinking about why you play music, what are your desires, and thinking long-term in terms of where do you want music to take you. We can never know where music's going to take us, of course. And I think a perfectly healthy desire of music is, I want to understand music, I want to experience the joy of playing an instrument, I want to feel that satisfaction of learning to do something difficult, because we live in a world where we all want just fast results, and sometimes doing something that requires some patience can really be that much more rewarding than something kind of surface level. And just carrying music with you your whole life, being able to teach someone a song, being able to play someone a song, being able to play music. We don't all have to have aspirations of being a professional musician, because professional musicians are out of their mind. You have to be a bit bananas to really aspire to play music professionally. I saw a great quote that said, if you expect anything from music, you expect something too much. And I feel fortunate that from a young age I was pretty determined to get out of my little small town. You know, I grew up in a house where we got hot water in 2001. It was basically a bush house with a concrete floor and a tin roof and a bunch of farm animals, and it was just kind of like, I just wanted to be out in the world playing music, playing with all the best musicians. I want to be the best I could be and the best that was possible, reach my potential. And so I just got really obsessed. I woke up every day at 4 a.m. through high school, and I practiced the guitar for 3 or 4 hours before school. That's how I got to be at the level in which I could get the attention of my mentors, who became people like Tommy Emmanuel, Eric Johnson, Robin Ford, Steve Vai. Once these people heard me play, they heard the hours I put in, and they heard my dedication, and they wanted to help me. So there's certain steps. You've got to put in the hours, you've got to put in the work, and you need mentors, you need people who are good influences, who can inspire you and help you learn. And fortunately, there's even more ways to connect with people online through online courses and social media, etc. As you all know, you're watching this video right now. And from there, getting the experience of playing. That's kind of the trajectory that I think is necessary if you really want to take it to the highest level. But I think it's important to just, I don't know, I think it's not like this balancing act where you need to do everything, a little bit of everything. To me, that just sounds like stressful. To me, it's like, I don't really care about being up with the latest TV shows. I don't really care about being up with the latest trends in this and that and that. I don't really pay that much attention to fashion and this and that and this and that, but I pay a lot of attention to music. I love to read books, and I feel really grateful to have a wonderful relationship with my wife. And anyway, Yaman says, digging the insight and talk. Much love to you and yours. Thank you, mate. You too. I hope all is well up there in Michigan. Leonard says, do you also play a 12-string guitar? I do not play a 12-string guitar. I mean, sometimes if there's one lying around, I'll fool around on one, but I don't have one. Maybe I should buy one. It's a little bit of a different vibe because it's not as precise playing 12-string. I like precision in the way I play. It's kind of one of the things I hear. If it's not clean and clear, then I'm not satisfied. That being said, sometimes when it's loose and it's grooving, that has a different precision. Horse, Jesus, and music are all a man needs. I like that. I used to ride horses when I was younger. I miss it a lot. What is your best practice advice? Thanks for your music, buddy. Well, I think my best practice advice would be to practice for small amounts of time, to keep a practice journal, and to be intentional about what you practice. So there can be some benefit in noodling and having fun, but to me that becomes old pretty quick. It's like if I sit there and just noodle every day, it's like I just feel like I'm not making any progress. So Anders Ericsson wrote a great book on practice called Peak, and it's about expert performance in any domain. He's the guy that came up with the 10,000 hour study that became the 10,000 hour rule, which was actually misinterpreted by Malcolm Gladwell, among other people. Anders Ericsson's interpretation, well, his research is a little different than the conclusions that Malcolm Gladwell came to. Anyway, read the book Peak and you'll understand. But what Anders says is the best way to practice is deliberately and ideally with the supervision of someone who can kind of course correct you. So I really do believe in having a teacher. Even though I'm self-taught, I had the best mentors known to the guitar world. Starting with the Emmanuel brothers and countless other musicians in Australia, I used to track down my favorite players and I would try to learn from them. I would ask them questions, I would pester them, and that's how I got a lot of information. And I have a coaching community in which people post videos in the community and I make suggestions and comments. And it's the kind of thing that when I see someone play, I can usually tell within 20 seconds. If I can tell within 5 seconds. Try these 5 things that I think are going to allow you to have a clearer technique, a better execution of what you're playing. Not that I'm like the guru and the authority, but sometimes you need an outside perspective from someone who really understands the minutia of what you're doing, and you've got to be a little bit crazy to put in the kind of time to become a serious musician like myself and a lot of the other performers you hear. And so my goal is to just kind of make life easier and reduce stress by saying, if you relax your left hand a little bit, you're probably going to have an easier time. The melody's not coming through clearly. If you work on the melody and really put in some deliberate practice time on that, then you're going to feel a sense of momentum, you're going to feel a sense of accomplishment, and it's going to give you the motivation to keep learning and keep going. Whereas if you just kind of noodle away and you think, I don't need anyone telling me what I should practice, and I don't need to get out of my comfort zone, then you're just kind of going to fade away and lose the zest for playing. That's at least the way I see it, and certainly not everyone is wired just like me, but if you connect with my music, perhaps you are. Richard said, how do you get newly inspired? Sometimes I struggle not to play the same thing again and again. Well, my attitude is to try to learn at a consistent pace. I try not to learn too fast because you kind of forget what you learn. I try not to learn too slow because you kind of lose momentum. You don't get inspired. I try to just learn at a consistent, steady pace. And I've tried to have that same pace through my whole learning journey. And I think that if you are having effective practice sessions, then you will feel more inspired than if you're not. I think it's good to force yourself out of your kind of comfort zone, learn a new song, learn a new style, learn a little bit of jazz, learn a little bit of bluegrass, learn a little bit of gypsy swing. These are all styles that I play kind of for fun and to challenge myself. I don't sit there and play a bluegrass concert. I play my own music and my own songs. So I learn other genres and other techniques to challenge myself and for the enjoyment of it. I love reading. I'm a generally curious person, so I find there's a lot of inspiration to be had. Certainly no shortage of inspiration in the world. You just watch the sunrise and there's beautiful inspiration. But in terms of feeling the momentum to be like motivated to play, I think that getting into a good routine, you don't have to be like rigid about your routine, but just intentional about what you do when you decide to practice. I feel like that's a key element. So I've got to jump off this live stream in just a moment and go have some dinner with my wife. For anyone who is wondering, I host Zoom calls every month and talk about a lot of these kind of things with my students, and they can ask me direct questions in my coaching community. And the coaching community doors are closed, but if you go to invisibletechnique.com, which is my teaching platform, click coaching community, you can join the wait list to be notified when I open the doors again. And you can also check out my beginner, intermediate, and advanced fingerstyle courses, which, like I said, are on sale this month for 80% off. So it's the biggest sale that it's the lowest price these courses are ever going to be, because they're serious courses. If you buy all three, there's 341 lessons. Video lessons, professionally shot with multi-cameras and tab. It's very intense. But it's digestible, and it's step-by-step, and I have a lot of wonderful reviews from people. You might think, why is he holding that amp again? You can win this amp if you purchase one of the courses this week. Doesn't matter where you are in the world, we'll figure out a way to get it to you. So there we go. I'm going to finish up with a song, and I thank you for being with us. I got to figure out what song to play. I think I'll play Endlessly, which is a new composition of mine that I'm working on. It's a song with words, but I play fingerstyle guitar as an accompaniment to my voice. I hope you like it. Thanks very much for watching. If you'd like to be notified when I schedule a live stream concert, I also have a link in the description called Livestream Emails, in which you can put your email in, and I'll just send you an email when I announce the live stream. That's about as simple as it needs to be. Here we go. This is Endlessly. Let's get the reverb right here. Endlessly, the days roll by. They wait for me under each night sky, and still I show up just like you see, as to how and why. I am endlessly, endlessly amazed at all that I can be when you love me, when you love me endlessly, endlessly. There's work to do, it weighs on me, but it's all for you, and I'm rising up. The world can see as to how and why. I am endlessly, endlessly amazed at all that I can be when you love me, when you love me endlessly. Our families, they're shrinking, bro. And as I search on, there's more of me as out and wide. I am endlessly amazed at all that I can be when you love me, when you love me endlessly. All right, there we go. I do have to run, but I did see a question, and I saw a couple of people asked it. I did answer it earlier, I believe. But if you purchase my courses through Udemy, which I know many of you did, then you will have lifetime access on Udemy. However, those courses are no longer supported. They're no longer going to be, I'm no longer going to be answering the comments. In fact, I can't now that I've unpublished those courses for new purchases. So I'm getting out of the business of selling any courses on Udemy, because Udemy is like the giant course platform that changes the way they pay artists, and I can't connect with my students directly. It's just customer support issues. Just look up Udemy on Trustpilot and you'll see how people feel about that platform. Invisible Technique is my course platform, where I have a more direct connection with my students, and anyone who purchases the courses on Invisible Technique will have lifetime access to them on Invisible Technique. If you've already purchased the courses on Udemy, like I said, you'll still have access to them on Udemy, but you won't have access to me through Udemy. So Invisible Technique is where I'll be updating the courses over time. If I decide to add things, change things, that's where they'll be, because I own Invisible Technique outright. It's not going anywhere. Udemy, many of you purchased those courses at a very cheap price. So on Invisible Technique, they're going to be priced at a fair price. And like I said, for this week, you can join for 80% off that regular price as an introductory, welcoming in a lot of the folks who were on Udemy. So I hope that answers your question. Check the link below. Scroll below to the FAQ section where it says, what if I purchased these courses on Udemy? And there's a page I created with some more information that you can read and make the choice whether to join me at Invisible Technique, which is up to you, of course. Hope you have a good rest of your week, everybody. It's been unusual doing a Tuesday stream. I've quite enjoyed it. Thanks very much for being with us as always, and I wish you all the best.